Hi, we're here with Skip today from the International Society of Oceanic Engineers, and today we're going to be learning about careers within the oceanic engineering field. So Skip, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Um, well, I'm retired now, but I've had a long career in ocean engineering, which has run run from designing sonar systems for both military and commercial purposes, and um, as well as the last 10 or 12 years of my my career was working at the Applied Physics Lab at the University of Washington, where we developed an underwater observatory and put that off the coast of Oregon and Washington. That's designed to bring the internet to the seafloor, and quite a bit of power, quite a bit of bandwidth, so that we can have real-time information coming back and understand the seafloor. Things like, well, right after we put it in, and it had instrumented an underwater volcano, the volcano erupted. So we have the first real information on volcanic eruption, what it does, and as it inflates. The earthquakes went from a few tens a day to over 8,000 in one day. So a lot of really interesting information. So the field itself, oceanic engineering, is basically oceanography, but from an engineer's perspective.
Awesome. So given that,
And involves a whole lot more, yeah, than what I do. For example, fluid dynamics, ship design, um, what the seafloor looks like. It's civil engineering properties. There's a divers, new diving apparatus, and so forth. It all comes under this heading.
awesome. So you kind of covered my first question about the goals of this career. So when you were still working full time, what would you say your average day looked like?
An average day. That reminds me of of a of a guy who said, "What's your average attitude of if you spend 8 hours sleeping and 18 hours or 16 hours standing up? Your average attitude is 33 degrees, and it doesn't pretty meaningless." I spend a good portion of my time at a computer screen, doing a lot of work, modeling things, talking to vendors. But then there's another probably I'm probably looking at anywhere from 1 to 5 months out of a year being in the field at sea, and doing things.
All right, that seems like a pretty interesting balance compared to a lot of different jobs. And I know that there's a lot of people who are interested in science professions, but aren't really too keen on spending all their day in an office. So this might be an interesting choice for those kind of people.
It's and right. If you like a little science and math, like to get your hands dirty, and and go places, do things. I've been all over the world with this.
So as an oceanic engineer, are you part of only the design process, or are you part of the implementation as well?
Yes, actually both. Um, the I've had problems where I'm giving a problem. In one case, design a sonar system that will detect schools of tuna 17 miles away in the eastern tropical Pacific. And that's where I start, and then you work through everything and build a system, or design the system. You can build it, implement, deploy it, take it out on ships, and then analyze the data afterwards. So you have the full spectrum of things you can do.
That's awesome. All right. So, what part of that do you think drew you to this job, and how did you get into oceanic engineering?
I in high school I had an interest in oceanography, but I started out at a community college. It was then they were then called junior colleges, um, but they didn't have oceanography as a major, and I kind of stumbled along with some things. I ended up going in the Navy for 6 years, and I had a division officer that said, "Hey, you know, you've got a lot of interest in the acoustics. Why don't you pursue that as a?" I was a physics major, um, and so I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in applied physics, and then in looking at underwater acoustics, fluid dynamics, and such things, and then got a master's in ocean engineering.
So,
And that's how I stumbled into it.
so what part of your journey would you recommend to someone who's maybe interested but not sure if they're the kind of person to go into oceanic engineering?
Um, well, first, if you've got a like math and so on, if you're kind of interested in that, there are a number of places that offer um, internships. Um, a number of like NOAA does. I know a number of the military labs do. The universities do. I've had high school students as interns and given them some significant problems to attack, and I've been very surprised at how much progress they made on the problems. It's really been rewarding for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, I think internships.
So I'd encourage talking to yeah, talk to start looking up places that do this kind of thing, and there are a number of some of them. For example, the University of Washington does not have an ocean engineering department, but they do have applied physics lab, and the applied physics lab works in this area. Most of the people are actually doing this job of oceanic engineering, although their job title may be different.
All right. Yeah, that's definitely a good choice for someone who's interested in pretty much any job, like not even limited to oceanic engineering. That's something I
You bet.
definitely did before deciding on pursuing computer science, and I'll probably continue to do as I kind of hash out my career choice more and more. All right. Would you say oceanic engineering has
Mm-hmm.
changed you as a person? Like, has it grown traits in you that you always had, like maybe a love for the ocean or like different? I'm not sure, but has it changed? Do you think it's changed you as a person?
Um, yeah, everyone's going to grow, right? And you get a lot of opportunity here to do both individual things as uh, tasks as well as working in groups. And um, uh, one job I had was working for a guy who was a real entrepreneur. I've never really met one before, and I learned a tremendous amount on how to sell things. Basically, you're trying to sell yourself, your product, your knowledge. It gave me quite an introduction to that and a way of approaching that. On the other hand, working within some large institutions, there's some tremendous people with a lot more experience than I've had, or whatever, and I was able to learn from them and to work with them, and so there's aspects everywhere. There's just um, utilize your opportunities, take advantage of things, and work with people. Yeah, you you put in, you get out.
Yeah, I think that's a really good saying. Uh, my dad always repeats this phrase about your life is dependent on the questions you ask. I think that applies here and with any field that you pursue. Learning, like you have to never be afraid to learn, and that applies to what you were just talking about. All right. Moving on to the
It's a
next question.
lifelong event.
Yep. Moving on to the next question. Do you think, can you think of any downsides of or regrets you have of related to pursuing this career?
There's been times of my life that I've been gone for 40% of the time, 40% of a year, traveling, either going to meetings or to going out to sea. And and some of those times happened when my kids were young and developing. So I missed some time with them. Uh, I think that's it's one of those trade-offs that you have to do.
Yeah, that balance is important to try and figure out what and like coping with the balance, I suppose.
And the other side of it is it was inspirational. My son is a marine geologist and nearing completion of his PhD at the University of Bergen, so in Norway. So it inspired him to go out looking and doing things and in a similar field.
Interesting. All right. In this career, are there like promotions of any kind, and like how it does work, or is it kind of just pursuing uh, different, more senior research positions? Maybe go into that a little bit more.
Um, my arc has been of as a developmental engineer. So I've been working in the research and development side of things. Um, some of it is changing jobs. Some of it is as moving up in responsibility within an organization. Um, and some of it is just a project may die and you move to another project and they may have things that they're looking for that you can provide and get a kick up in pay and responsibility. Uh, Looking for those types of things is what gets you promoted in anywhere.
So, kind of related to that question, how would or where would one start in this career? So, suppose they're fresh out of school, then how would they get started in this career?
Um, Takes a lot of training. Um, the Oceanic Engineering field incorporates electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, physicists, um, and you're exploring having to deal with the chemistry, the physics, the biology. Um, One of my, as I said, looking for tuna. Well, what are the attributes of tuna acoustically, and what's the propagation of sound um, through the water in that particular environment? You've got a lot of things to consider. So a good ground training in physics and engineering is always a good start. The other part of it is um, looking for those internships, looking for those places where things are being done, and then moving forward with those, talking to people in the field, going to some of the meetings. There's two annual meetings for the Oceanic Engineering and Marine Technology Societies jointly put together. One of them is in the U.S. and the other one, the spring meeting, is always in some other country, and the fall meeting is in the U.S. and it bounces back and forth between the East and West Coast. So there's opportunities to there's been years where I only was able to attend a meeting if it happened in the city that I happened to be in. But some of these cities host these meetings all the time, like Seattle, San Diego, Boston, and so forth. So if you're in those areas, that's where these types of activities congregate. Then you're likely to be able to go to those things, see those people. You meet people, you learn new things. Again, it's a lifetime learning.
So would you say with this career, there's a lot of learning that's done on the job, or is it a lot of learning where you're using stuff, or is there a lot of like more traditional like school type of learning?
I think you start with a basis of traditional school type learning, but then there's a lot of you're given problems. This is a problem solving thing. So you're given a problem, and how do you find solutions to it? And sometimes those solutions they're not obvious to you when you start, and take a bit of looking and talking to people, incorporating ideas from other people. In some of those collaborations, you find that there's things you've never heard of before, but now become the obvious solution to the problem. And so it's a mix. You start out. You've got to understand the vocabulary. You've got to understand the basics of things. And so there's where the formal education comes in to give you a basis to start from, but then you work from there.
All right. Sounds like a pretty good balance between the two. And I think I definitely prefer jobs where there's an emphasis on that learning on the job, like taking what you learn in school and extending it farther. Before we wrap up the interview, is there
Oh,
anything
yes.
that you would like to tell someone who's looking to pursue this career that we haven't covered?
Persistence. Sometimes you have to push and keep going. The somebody may not have an opening right then, and you have to push a little bit more. I've had some students that came in and wanted to do something. We didn't have that at the time, and other ones we've been able to divert them to things. I had a student once that was really interested in spacecraft and control of spacecraft. He found out that control of underwater vehicles was much harder than spacecraft because the rate of communication is so much less. It's a harder problem. So he got a good appreciation for it. He ended up going back to spacecraft, but he had a good appreciation for what we do. So it's perseverance and going where you think you want to go, and then look to what is what you enjoy. You don't want to do something that you don't enjoy, because you're going to be there for a long time. I've had a 50-year career, so I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed the people, and so pay attention to those, and keep at it.
Awesome. So I'd like to thank you again, Skip, for giving us this great interview to talk about oceanic engineering. And if any students have any questions, I'll be sure to leave your contact information somewhere and they can reach out to you. Thank you again.
Thank you.